Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It's Friday again, and this time it's Parashat Emor. In our parasha, we touch on many different topics, from the beginning of the parasha, which is mostly focused on the Kohanim, the priests, and all sorts of different halachot, commandments that refer to them. The rest of the parasha very famously touches on a lot of the chagim, a lot of the festivals, and all sorts of different elements regarding them. But there seems to be one subject which seems to appear many different times in the parasha that I'd like to put my finger on. And this is the question, this is the topic of Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem. And we're going to explain both of those concepts. In Judaism, we don't like mentioning the name of God. It's a very famous thing, the Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, Shem, Hashem. We don't actually say the name, rather we call God Hashem, the name. And there are many psukim throughout the Tanakh that refer to God as, refer to his name, right? By Yomahu Yeh Hashem Echad Ushmo Echad, right? Yeh Adonai Echad Ushmo Echad. The name is the way that we appreciate and connect to God, and that is why very often not only do we not say Hashem, we don't not say the name of God, but we say Hashem, and very often that is itself abbreviated into a hey with a little chupchik on top, and sometimes even into a dalet with a chupchik on top, because so many different layers of trying to give honor and respect to the name of God. So when it comes to Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem, this time we're actually talking about Hashem as the name of God. Kiddush of the name of God and Chilul of the name of God. Both of these terms, Kiddush and Chilul, need to be analyzed and identified. But first, let's read the pasuk from which we learn this mitzvah, and that will give us an insight into trying to explain these words. It says in the parasha, the most famous case, Ushmartem mitzvotai va'asitem otam, ani Adonai. Keep my guidelines, my rules, my commandments, do them, and indeed I am God. V'lo techalelu et shem kodshi, and you will not be mechalel the name, my holy name, Shem Kodshi, v'nit kadashti, and I shall v'nikadashti, I will be holy, I will be sanctified in the Jewish people. Ani Adonai mikadeshchem, I am your God who sanctified you. Hamotzi etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim, ani Adonai, who took you out of Egypt to make you a people. Liot lachem le'Elohim, to me, I will be your God. Ani Adonai, again, I am Hashem. These two phrases, v'lo techalelu et Shem Kodshi, and you will not be a Chilul Hashem, and instead v'nikdashti, and I will be sanctified, there will be a Kiddush Hashem. This is where it all pivots. And this, by the way, when you look at the different sources in Halakha, this is where they all refer back to. The concept of Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem, again, if we want to give a very simple, classic translation, Kiddush Hashem is the sanctification of God's name, and Chilul Hashem is the desecration of God's name. But I think that doesn't often help us in understanding this concept. We actually have to take a step deeper, delve into this concept a bit more. When it comes to the Jewish people, we are the representatives of God to the rest of humanity. We sometimes forget that the story is not actually about us. Genesis, the Bible, the Tanakh, the message of Hashem to the world does not actually start with the Jews. Famous Rashi at the beginning of the Tanakh says, why doesn't it start with HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, Rosh Chodeshim? This is the month for you, right? And the Jewish commandments and the Jewish people and the story of the Exodus. But no, we start with the creation of the world and creation of humanity. Because really, God's message is a message to all humankind. This is part of a much deeper relationship between man and God, right? As the famous Michelangelo, right? With the two fingers, right? Man trying to reach out to connect with God, the heart of the Sistine Chapel. But we as Jews very often like to talk about the role of Judaism in the world, the role of Judaism for ourselves. Why are we here? What is our task? What is our purpose? And we very often focus very much within the Jewish world. We need to keep the mitzvot, we need to keep the halakha, we need to preserve Jewish identity. But I think it's important every now and then to step back and say, wait a second, we're also here with regard to the rest of the world. We're also interacting with the rest of humanity. The Jewish people, as it says very right before the Ten Commandments and Har Sinai, are supposed to be a mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh, a kingdom of priests and a kadosh nation. What does it mean to be a kohen? What does it mean to be a holy nation? This all ties back into Venit Kadashti, and I will make you holy, and you will be my people, and Vekidoshim to you from previous parashot. The idea of the Jewish people being the sanctified people, as we say, by the way, on the Chagim, Ata bachartanu mikol ha'amim, ahavta otanu, v'ratzita banu, v'kidashtanu b'mitzvotecha, right? The Jewish people, Asher kideshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. We are sanctified. There's a very important idea here. The Kohen, likewise, is also sanctified. And we see this phrase, by the way, coming up throughout our parasha. This whole idea of the Kohen, v'lo yichalel et shem kodshi, v'lo yichalelu et kodshei b'nei Israel. The idea of Chilul and Kadosh is very much tied into the idea of being a Kohen. So what is it that a Kohen does? A Kohen is a liaison between God and the rest of the world. In our community, the Kohen is a liaison between God and the rest of the Jewish congregation. The Yisrael, the Levi, and the Kohen, and God. The Kohen is there to take the korbanot, the sacrifices of the people, bring them in the Bet Mikdash to Hashem, and take the word of Hashem, right? V'torah yivakshum mipiu, right? Siftei Kohen yilamdu dat, and bring the message of God to the people. That is the message. The Kohen is supposed to be that missing link that is able to connect these two. So if the Jewish people is a Mamlechet Kohanim, we are the Kohen, we are the sanctified nation, which is there to bring God to the rest of the world. Now, what do we do with that? How am I supposed to understand it? That means that the rest of the world is looking at us. This is something which recently we've been delving into a lot and trying to understand, in modern Jewish times, why are the Jews always on the news? Why is everyone so obsessed with, Gaza and Palestine and the Jews and there are marches, and despite there being tons of other wars out there and tons of other genocides that people can actually protest against, for some reason, whenever anything happens with regard to the Jews, it makes the news. Why is that? And the answer is because of this very concept of Chilul Hashem and Kiddush Hashem. We, the Jewish people, are there to be the moral guide for the rest of humanity. That is why the Jewish people are created. We are Mamlechet Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh. We're supposed to be special, right? Kadosh means more than just sanctified. It means unique. It means special. Not in a way that we can then, walk around, with our chest all puffed out and say like, "Oh, look at us. We're the best." On the contrary, we have the task. It's not a benefit, rather it's more of a burden. And we are there to show the world, as very often says, "Letaken olam b'malchut Shaddai," to try and bring salvation to the world, to try and fix the world, to try and guide the world. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah udvar Adonai miYerushalayim, because from Yerushalayim the message of morality and truth goes out to the world. I think that's a very important message, and this brings us back to our topic at hand. What is Chilul Hashem and what is Kiddush Hashem? We talked a bit about Kiddush Hashem, sanctifying God's name, idea of being a role model to the rest of the universe. And I think to a certain degree, if I replace the word sanctify and the opposite of that, of Chilul Hashem, I'd like to propose two other words: to bring honor to God's name and to dishonor God's name. Kiddush Hashem means that people look at us and think, "Wow, that's really special. There's something there. There's something that we can look up to. There's something which is a moral role model that we appreciate, that we value, that we would like to emulate." And you'd be surprised if, in essence, Christianity and Islam, both of these religions that have so much hate against Judaism at times, in many ways comes from this moment of, hey, we want to be you. We want to be the new Jews. We claim we are the chosen people because we really believe that you have something special and that we want to be like you. We want to have the relationship you have. Now, in that case, maybe it's done negatively, but at its source, at its core, there's something incredibly positive about that. The Rambam himself says that these ideas, Christianity and Islam, are there to bring the world closer to God in the long run. And that is something I think that we can appreciate. Chilul Hashem is the opposite of that. It's when the world turns around and says, this is the chosen people, these are the people of God. This is not something that we want to have anything to do with. And I want to read you a fascinating pasuk in Yechezkel, where it talks about the Jewish people being sent out into the nations. This is from my haftarah, from my bar mitzvah parsha. That's why I know this. And Yechezkel chapter 36. It says, Beit Israel yoshvim al admatam ve'itamu. The Jewish people have failed, and they've destroyed their credibility. They are unholy, and I have punished the Jewish people for their crimes. And I have scattered them among the nations as a punishment for their deeds. And they came, these Jews arrived in all of these nations, and they have brought dishonor to the name of God. Because these people, the non-Jews, will say to them, these are the chosen people. These are God's people. I'm reminded of a title of a video that Candace Owens, one of the modern day neo-anti-Semites, made about the state of Israel and a terrible thing that happened in the 6-day war with an American ship, the Liberty. And she talked about, we were killed by God's chosen people. In the title of the video, it's already, referencing, yes, these are this is the act. This is how the chosen people behave. Says God, and I have decided to reclaim my honor. I will come and redeem you as a point of honor. That we need to bring God's name back into a place of respect, of honor. And the Jewish people are indeed the emblem of God's honor in the world. What does this have to do with us? I think today, when we are constantly navel-gazing about our own, role as the Jewish people and as the Israeli nation and what is Israel doing, and we're trying to fight anti-Semitism, I think it sometimes gives us some strength. We need to take a minute to step back and say, listen, God is doing all sorts of interesting, wacky things in the world. We don't understand exactly what he's doing. He has plans. He brought us back to the land of Israel. He brought us all together from all of the different nations. He is saving the Jewish people daily from all sorts of terrible afflictions and destructions and threats from all over the world. There seems to be something special about the Jews. And the world seems to notice that. And we seem to notice that. And it's not always about what we do. There is a broader story. We, of course, need to do our hishtadlut. We need to do as much as we can to be that light unto the nations, to be a beacon of morality and of hope. But even if we do that, that doesn't necessarily mean that we will, by definition, be a Kiddush Hashem. We will bring honor to God's name. Sometimes even that can be misunderstood, and the world can still find dishonor in our circumstance. I think the message of this parsha is we have to do our best. But we shouldn't beat ourselves up too much about it. We shouldn't always say, why is Israel so bad at PR? Why are we always failing in the propaganda war? To a certain degree, this is already in the Tanakh. The Jewish people are constantly being judged by so many bigger powers than themselves. It's not always up to us. We are part of a much bigger story. We have a role to play. But we also have to have hope and faith that God knows what he's doing when it comes to the Jewish story. And Be'ezrat Hashem, if we in our own lives can do our best to be a Kiddush Hashem, a sanctification of God's name, even though we may be seen as a Chilul Hashem sometimes, despite all of our efforts, again, that may be part of a much bigger plan that we don't understand. Shabbat Shalom.